What's up, podcast? This is Max from the Plant Code here. This is a special episode because I was joined by the great animal activist Sol EUBANKS. This was the very first attempt at recording an episode live on Instagram, and maybe some of you saw it there. If you don't follow us yet on Instagram, do so at the Plant Code. So I do hope you enjoy this episode today. And today's episode is brought to you by Plant Power Dubai, Dubai's first meal plan for vegans. It's tasty and affordable, and you can get an extra 10% off with the discount code PLANTCODE at www.plantpowerdubai.com. This episode is also brought to you by Corkest14. They make vegan-friendly cork products like wallets, handbags, jewelry, phone covers. It's a great way to move away from your leather items that you own currently, and you can get an amazing 40% off all orders with the discount code ThePlantCode. And that's at www.corkest14.com. That's KORKEST 14.com. Enjoy the episode, guys.
Let's get straight into it. Like, how did you get into activism?
I got into activism. I think I've always been a activist at heart. So when I was younger, I was always into just being aware of social causes that was really specific to me, I guess, and just resonated with me personally. During that time, I would say around the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of the police shootings and killings of unarmed black men, and, just the Rodney King era was a little bit before when I was aware of what was going on, but that kind of just set the tone for the kind of activism that just resonated with me. But I've always been into doing activism or just being aware. But in terms of animal activism, I would say after I went vegan, I watched Cowspiracy, and that really changed my so I went vegan after watching Cowspiracy, and I hope I'm not answering other questions that you'll ask me.
Oh man, it's all one question, And that main question is, how do we change the world? And it all links back into that. So as much as we can learn from your story is the best way to go.
Yeah, that's one thing I really didn't realize, that, okay, I have some kind of experience now. So I guess I have a story to share with people outside of just, wanting to just be a better person now, have some experience in this field. But I watched Cowspiracy, went vegan. About a year later, I just realized, it wasn't enough to not participate in these industries and these forms of suffering. I actually wanted to speak out against the suffering that happens and share my story with people, and just not even share my story, just be an advocate for the animals. So I would say just after a year of being a vegan, I started watching YouTube videos, seeing people like Banana Warrior Princess. She's like one of my favorite activists. Excuse me. She was the first person who I saw who I felt like I could be that kind of activist. Like the way she talked to people, the way she held her conversations, it just really resonated with me. But of course, the Earthling Eds, I started watching them, James Aspie, just different activists, Joey Carbstrong.
Yeah.
Once I saw them doing outreach with Anonymous for the Voiceless, I was like, oh, okay, this is how it's done. I could see myself being a part of Cubes of Truth and just speaking to the public about veganism and animal agriculture.
And you're a very humble guy, and like the vegan sheepdog just said, it is important that we all do share our stories, because you never know like the impact that's going to have and how that's going to inspire someone. Just your story can be timed at the right time. It can be something that really resonates with them. And I wanted to touch on one of the things that you said, that initially you're into the social aspect of it and the discrimination. And one of the roots that I see that comes back with veganism is that discrimination is the root of all evil. And that we easily relate that into human terms, but then you need to relate that into animals as well. And so I hear a lot that there's kind of this white male thing that are getting all the attentions when it comes to activists. Do you feel that, or is that irrelevant to you?
Well, I think it's a twofold question. So I do feel it, I do see it. It's irrelevant in the aspect of animal suffering. So the animals obviously don't care the color of the person or what sexual orientation the being is that is advocating for them, as long as someone is advocating for them. But I also feel like the movement won't grow and be as productive and as fruitful as it can be if we don't start highlighting people with diverse backgrounds and diverse stories and personalities and perspectives, because it's one of the situations where if you're only preaching to people that's with you and like you, you're only going to get so far. Because even you take any group of oppressed beings, if the only people that are fighting for the rights are those oppressed beings, honestly, they're probably only going to get to it's like a ceiling,
Yeah.
It's not only going to take them, but it's going to take other people outside of them to, bring awareness to their suffering. So I think, yes, it is a perception of, I guess, the vegan activist movement where it's either white men advocating or white women, but obviously that's not the totality of the movement. Those are just the people at the forefront, and it's a lot of reasons that may happen, because in general, how can I say, veganism is a privilege to an extent. It shouldn't be a privilege, but everyone, literally, if you're homeless, you can't really worry about being vegan.
Yeah, you're thinking about survival, and you got to be compassionate towards yourself originally. Yeah.
Exactly. But the more access you have, the more options you have, the more you can pick and choose what you want to eat.
Yeah.
That's not to say that if you're on a limited budget, you can't be vegan. It's just, we live in a world where there's white privilege. And so with that
I agree.
privilege comes certain things and certain access that everyone doesn't have. So, if you have more access, you're able to do more things, like be an advocate for other beings that society don't quite consider equal to us. But if you're, Black or Latin or Asian or any form of being that hasn't, that isn't a part of that, I want to say, that supremacy, then, your options may be limited. So I guess I just say that to say that, yes, there is a stigma, but it's not, the movement isn't limited to that stigma. If you're actually in it, you see tons of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of it now, is that there's people coming from all backgrounds as well. And it's not even a line of conversation that I wanted to go down, because for me, originally, it was like, who cares? We're fighting for animals. We're not going to be fighting between each other to decide who can, I mean, whoever wants to, who has the energy, needs to get involved. Because it was actually Sophie Benker, when I did the episode with her in Switzerland, she was talking about this like bit of a sexist approach as well, men, women, and things like that. So I was really surprised to even find that discrimination within the animal rights movement as well.
Yeah, it's definitely there.
But I think it's the beauty of it as well. Like, when you can see all backgrounds, there are vegans all around the world now, Latins, like you say, and Black, or everything. Like, it doesn't even matter these days. Like, everyone's getting on board with it because it's better for their health, better for the environment, and most importantly, better for the animals as well. It makes sense to everyone these days.
Yeah, and I have seen people that are minorities in the movement. And just my personal experience, I know when I do participate in any form of activism, generally I'm the only Black male or the only Black person. And it's not something that I'm frustrated or angry about, more so than I'm just aware of it. But I do think that the movement should be aware of it. Like, perfect example is the DXE disruption. I don't know if you saw that, where the guy went on stage and took the mic from Kamala Harris.
No, I didn't see that.
Did you see that at all?
No.
Yes. So, when things like that happen, I think the movement needs to be aware that, okay, he did that, and it just reflected horribly on the movement. And it's because there weren't a lot of, I'm almost certain there weren't a lot of diverse people around him telling him, hey, look, you're about to go on stage on a panel of Black women and snatch the mic out of a Black woman's hand and cause a disruption. And if we don't have people that are in the movement that are aware of the optics of that, it's going to reflect bad on the movement, and it's going to make people think that we already have a perception of being like elitist.
Yeah.
And if those situations happen, it's going to reflect poorly on us, and that doesn't help the animals. So, so on one end, it doesn't matter what color you are if you're fighting for the animals, but in terms of us being productive and efficient, it absolutely does matter on that end.
Yeah. I mean, I struggle with these things because it's like, there's that perfect ideology that we strive for, but then there's the effectiveness that you want to have on the other side of that. So what I wanted to talk to you a lot about was more of your street-based activism. Because I'm going to be attending my first Cube of Truth next week. I'm going to be back in New York for the week-long Cube.
I didn't know this was your first Cube.
Yeah, that's going to be my first one, actually. So I'm excited.
Okay.
I'm like a Cube virgin. I don't know if that's the word for it, but so I'm excited to finally get out there and properly be involved in it. So, I mean, I probably won't be the first one. Maybe there's some people going for the first Cube this weekend. So what kind of tips?
Sure.
What kind of tips would you have for myself and the others?
Oh, okay. So if anyone hasn't attended a Cube of Truth before, what a Cube of Truth is, it is a artistic demonstration where people stand in a military-like formation, back to back or shoulder to shoulder, and they display slaughterhouse footage to the public. And people on the outside of the cube, the people that are standing are considered in the cube, and the people that are outside the cube are doing outreach and talking to the public and talking to them about what happens in animal agriculture and animal cruelty. And we all wear the Guy Fawkes mask inside of the cube. So if it's your first time attending a cube, I would say, well, for you personally, I would just say, definitely when you're standing in the cube, you definitely want to stand in as still of a position as possible, because we want to appear to be in order and very uniform. And the moderators will tell you all this. Obviously, and you don't interact with the people when you're inside the cube because you have the mask on. So your job is to, be almost like a billboard. And the people on the outside of the cube are to have the conversations. But they both go hand in hand, because if one doesn't do their job, the other person's job they can't be effective. But I would say, stand as still as possible. Listen to a lot of the conversations, because since it's your first time, you probably won't get to interact with the public unless, I don't know, who knows, maybe you will. But it's a really good time to listen and hear conversations, and you can think about things that you would say and how you would respond. And it really prepares you to speak to people better about activism or just about veganism, because you kind of get to just be a fly on the wall. So I think it's going to be a great experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to get involved with it and to obviously meet most of the other people that are going to be there, the organizers, and learn from the great activists that are there, and to be effective as well. And so what kind of technique do you use when you're doing the outreach?
One is the Socratic method. So for those that don't know what the Socratic method is, it's like a way of talking to people where you answer based on where you kind of answer with questions. So if someone says something like, "Oh, I'm not vegan because us as humans are at the top of the food chain," and you don't just automatically go into defense mode.
Yeah.
You ask them to elaborate and say, "Hey, okay, well, what makes you feel that way? Or can you give me an example of why you feel that way?" So the goal is to have an honest back and forth dialogue. It's not to be defensive or very well, you are unapologetic.
You're not getting preachy. You're opening a conversation, making them think about their own beliefs.
You can be unapologetic in your stance and what you believe in, but you don't have to be uptight and rigid and stern and just we're humans. We want to, when we're having a conversation with somebody, it needs to be balanced and healthy. It doesn't just need to be so intense. So one of the things that I try to do is just be nice and casual and friendly. Listen to their questions and honestly listen, actively listen. Don't just go in when they're in the middle of a question, and once they say a word, then you already kind of know the answer. Like, no, listen to them. And I respond. One of the things that I do is I respond. I repeat what they said to me. So if someone says to me, well, I would be vegan, but I don't know if it's healthy. And I would say something like, well, a lot of people feel that a lot of people have that same feeling as you, and they don't know if it's healthy or not. So that way, I'm reiterating what they're saying, so they actually know that I'm listening to them, and I'm not just here being a aggressive, preachy vegan that way.
It's true. I mean, we do always want to just like spew out all this information that we have, all this research that we've done, all these documentaries that we've seen, and we try and like cram so much information into one sentence that it's just overwhelming, and there's no real, and you get angry, you get emotional. And when I see like the good people do it, when you see like the great activists and the way that it's very calm and the way they manage to keep composure and keep it direct and to the point, and that seems to be the most effective way of leading people to consider at least their own beliefs.
Yes, and to add on to that, you have to definitely compartmentalize. I will say to anyone that's trying to speak to anyone about veganism or animal agriculture, if people easily trigger you, then I would say don't even do activism. I would wait until you can do it from a place where it's not so personal to you when you're having these conversations. Because I've had all kinds of people tell me all kinds of things. I've had people tell me, F the animals, I don't care about the animals, and they are my property. And if these things trigger you, then you're going to have a negative interaction with people. But what you want to do is you want to be able to listen to them and not let that be so personal to you. You want to be able to take that in, absorb it, and say, okay, I understand, and have a fruitful conversation.
Something that seems to be a big confusion at the moment, and that comes back a lot, because a lot of people, when you talk about veganism, they mention their health and how is it healthy for me. So they consider the plant-based diet, which isn't the same thing as going vegan, is it? So how do you differentiate the two?
So the way you differentiate between the two is one is moral and ethical, and one is just a health-based thing. So obviously, and when I say this, it's no judgment to anyone. It's no persecution or anything like that. It's just a distinction. Just like if someone was vegetarian, they wouldn't be considered a vegan, and you wouldn't tell them, "Oh, you're not vegan. You're a vegetarian, and I look down upon you." No, it wouldn't be like that. It would just be like, "Oh no, that's not exactly vegan because you consume dairy products." But the difference between I think the plant-based or the vegan and plant-based community is starting to differentiate is that plant-based it's the diet of a vegan, but it's not the other things that come along with being vegan in terms of your lifestyle. So you could theoretically, follow a plant-based diet, and you could still support something like dog fighting or going to zoos and aquariums. These things as vegans we don't participate in. So we are against all forms of animal abuse and animal suffering and exploitation as much as we practically can be.
I mean, that goes so far though, doesn't it? Like there's no real limit to that. So a lot of people, they ask me like, can I be vegan and still have a leather wallet or a leather pair of shoes that I had before? And so what do you say to these people?
So I say that it is complex. I ultimately say it okay, I don't want to say yes or no, but I will say specific to that situation. If you consider yourself vegan and you don't support these forms of cruelty and suffering, and you don't purchase leather, and you don't purchase animal products, fur, anything like that, obviously you're a vegan. Now, if you have a leather couch, I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy a new couch tomorrow. That's not very practical. Or if you have a car and it has leather in the car, no one would tell you to go out and buy a new car because your car isn't vegan. But in terms of wearing leather and wearing these products, I would say the only thing I would tell someone to be mindful of is that when you wear these products, it does promote the exploitation of animals. So although you yourself may not be purchasing new leather, when people see you wearing leather, you are promoting that it's okay to use animals for clothing.
And normalizing it as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I would say that this person would be vegan. Yeah, you're vegan if you don't support animal cruelty and suffering, but you don't. But you may wear an old leather jacket or something. You're vegan because you're not actively supporting these industries and they're suffering, but you are promoting the use of that of an animal as a commodity.
Because people always get a little bit overwhelmed by it, and then they start trying to poke holes into veganism. And I always try and encourage them to, at least try and get started. Start with you sit down 3 times a day in front of a plate. Start with that, and then you can start like chipping away at all the other stuff. I mean, there's so much in our society that isn't vegan, that involves a lot of cruelty, that it's really tough for people to eradicate all of that from one day to the next. And they can't, and they feel like they can't do it straight away, so they don't do it at all.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, if you're doing it for moral reasons, well, even before that, okay, so being vegan is about doing what's practical and possible. So, if you don't know all these things that are or aren't vegan, start with what you know that is vegan, and then just work yourself from there. So, like when I first became vegan, I technically was plant-based, and it wasn't because I was consciously making a decision to be plant-based. It was just I didn't know. I wasn't aware that veganism extended beyond a dietary thing. So as I learned more and more, then obviously I adjusted, because once I knew better, I did better.
Yeah.
So yes, like you said, start with your food. Start with the things that you know are vegan. And if someone questions you or challenges you, you don't have to be defensive. You just say, "Look, I don't know. I didn't know." Like, there are things I'm pretty sure that I may or may not contribute to this day that aren't vegan. Like, someone told me that that guitar strings aren't vegan. Like, they're made from, I think, sheep guts or something like that.
Wow.
And obviously I would have never known that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I got 3 guitars. I better start paying attention to that.
Exactly. Who would have thunk it? You know what I'm saying? Because we do live in a society that exploits animals in such a variety of ways.
Yeah.
That we'll never know. No one probably doesn't. No one person may know all the ways. Like, it's probably so many. But, like you said, you start with what you know and build from there. And
that's the great thing about social media as well, because, I mean, we can have a discussion. I'm learning from you, and then through the platforms that you have, like your Twitter account, your Facebook, your Instagram, you're sharing a lot of this information as well. So it's becoming accessible. And I recently came across your YouTube channel, Culture Vegan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was checking out a few of your videos, a little bit of outreach in that. Very well put together. So what kind of idea do you have behind that?
So initially, the goal behind my channel was okay. When I watched a lot of content online on YouTube that was vegan or plant-based, it was all in different places. So if I wanted to see an Earthling Ed outreach or a Banana Warrior Princess outreach, I would have to go to their channel. But then if I wanted to find out about a food review, I would have to go to another channel. And then if I wanted to find out the latest vegan news or see someone in a discussion talk about veganism, I would have to go to another channel. And I was like, well, okay, I do have a degree in filmmaking. I know how to film and produce content. Why don't I just make a channel dedicated to the whole culture of veganism?
Okay.
Because people don't know that it's a whole culture and it's a whole lifestyle, that it's just, some people think it's just food. So I was like, okay, I can create a channel and have all these different things on my channel that relate to veganism and just display the whole culture of it. So that was the goal behind the channel. It's been on the back burner lately just because I haven't had the energy to film, shoot, and edit everything, because everything that you see on the channel, I shot, I filmed it, and I edited it.
And editing takes a long time, doesn't it?
Editing takes twice as long as 2 to 3 times as long as the actual creation of the video.
Because, I mean, I recently started it with my podcast and I was putting it together as video. And I was seeing I was spending maybe out of 45 minutes recording and then 3 hours editing it. And it was just a single camera. I mean, probably because I'm new to the whole thing as well and pretty rubbish at it. But then, it takes so much time and people don't realize how much time and effort goes into editing.
Absolutely. And me having a degree in filmmaking, I knew how I'm miking people up. I'm getting multiple camera angles, and that just adds to the because I did want all of my footage. I'm an artist at heart, so I want my stuff to look a certain way. I want my stuff to sound a certain way. I want it to be professional as best as I can do it. So I don't want to just go with the camera and shoot. No, I kind of want to do it in a film-like manner. So so that was the goal, to create content that encompasses the whole vegan culture that looks film-like in quality. So those are my two things. But lately I just haven't had the time to really pour into it. I still do outreach videos as often as I can, but even those take time. I have to sync the video up and sometimes do some slight color grading. So it's a process. But yeah, but thanks for checking it out. I have some plans for it. I can't really say right now, but I do have some plans around my channel that I want to explore.
Oh, cool. Well, I look forward to seeing it. I will put a link down below for it in the actual podcast episode of this.
Thanks.
I believe on Instagram it's @culture_vegan is the Instagram account for it. Okay, cool. And there'll be a link to that and the YouTube as well.
Yeah, youtube.com/culturevegan.
That's the one. I discovered you actually on Twitter. And a lot of your stuff pops up all over the place on Twitter, like screenshots of your tweets.
Yeah.
Like they seem to pop up on Instagram, they pop up
Yeah.
on Facebook. Like you see, Twitter seems to be effective for you.
Yeah, it's something that I just kind of caught me by surprise, because I've had my Twitter account for maybe 7 or 8 years, and I've been, just, it was never about nothing. It was just random thoughts about whatever pops up in my head, or observations of music, and just, it was no rhyme or reason to my Twitter. So for years, I've just, it's been me and some friends that I know on there, and I've had like 200 or 300 followers for like the last half decade or so. But then I had a friend that said something about, he made a comment about the vegans on Twitter. And I was like, oh, I really didn't know that there was like a vegan community on Twitter. So I just kind of started following different vegan accounts and start, just sharing my thoughts. And I guess, being in the activist community, I kind of know some things that, maybe everyone doesn't know, or maybe I've had conversations and can word things a certain way. And, to my surprise, people just took some of my tweets and ran with them and reposted them. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is interesting. I'm seeing my followers like increase by the hundreds by like each day. So it was like, oh, okay, maybe people are really listening to what I have to say. So now I just try to use it as a form of activism. I try to promote all the events that I do or that I go to, and just share it with everyone on there as much as often.
So you had no real plan. There was no like scheme or social media plan to, I don't know, do outreach. It just kind of happened by accident, really.
What do you mean online?
I mean, you didn't like plan your Twitter strategy, did you?
Not really. I mean, I have stuff in my drafts. I try to, on my Instagram, there's a certain method of madness to my Instagram that I do, but in terms of like growing it, there's no real rhyme or reason. It was just literally, I just started tweeting stuff that was on my mind about animal suffering. And I do come from like a hip hop background, lyricist, MC, and sound engineering background. So being witty with words and writing poetry is something that I've kind of always had the ability to do. And it just kind of helps out with Twitter when you kind of have like, 280 characters to express a thought. I will say one of the things that I do with my Twitter account is that I think about what I'm going to say for a while before I say it. So I have maybe like over 100 or 200 drafts in my Twitter account right now, because I know what I want to say, but I want to say it exactly in the way that I want it to be conveyed. I don't want to miss a word or have someone misinterpret a word. So if I say something and I'm like, okay, even a child can understand what I'm trying to say.
So you tweak it kind of until it's perfect, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I tweak it. Just like if I'm writing a song or writing a poem, that's how, the more popular of my tweets are.
You don't go all like Donald Trump, like write something and just send it out there. Yeah.
Nah. I mean, it's very rare that I do, but in general, if I'm having a conversation with someone on Twitter, that's one thing. But in terms of the actual thoughts in my head that I want to convey and get across, yeah, I work on them. I definitely work on them.
So you talked about like you're coming from a hip hop background. Is there a big vegan community in the hip hop background?
I don't want to say there's a big vegan community, but there is a space in veganism. There's a connection between veganism and hip hop. And some of the artists that, like when I was growing up, that I listened to that I didn't know at the time were vegan were two of my favorite artists, Dead Prayers. And now it's starting to grow. So, for the people that are familiar with hip hop, people like Styles P from the Loxy's vegan. There's a super dope vegan rapper named Gray. He's the plant-based Drippin, vegan Thanksgiving. He's super dope. He just released a project called The Breaks. It's on iTunes and Spotify and Tidal.
I'll put a link down to that as well.
Yeah, that's super dope. I've been listening to that the last week or so. He's incredibly dope. But I think he's probably like the face of the like vegan hip hop movement right now. Because he has a vegan family. His partner is a vegan chef, and they just had a baby, so it's a vegan baby. Like he has a whole vegan world of of just stuff that he is a part of.
That's awesome. I mean, like that would make it so much easier for everyone. But like, for example, me and I imagine you, like my family's not vegan. Is your family vegan?
No, my family's not vegan at all.
I mean, my parents are working towards it. My sister is vegan now, but so how do you like deal with your family members, like Thanksgiving, all these Christmas and all these big family events that there's a lot of social pressure on?
I think the way I deal with it now is, so my family's, they know now. So when I first became vegan, it wasn't, they didn't really grasp it. So maybe like the first year I was vegan, I wasn't, speaking about veganism as much, and I wasn't an activist. So, if I went to my mom's house for Thanksgiving, I would just say, oh, no thanks, I had something to eat before I came, and I really didn't stress the issue.
So you're like closet vegan, like in denial kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't screaming about it. So, but the more and more that I started to do activism, it just became a more of my life, bigger part of my life. The next year I would tell my mom, well, no, I'm vegan. I don't, eat this and that. And then, the next year she would try to make something. I'd be like, well, I really can't eat that because it's not vegan. And, last Thanksgiving, she really went out of her way to make sure that I had something that I could eat. And that really touched me, it really made me feel the fact that she appreciated what I stood for enough to accommodate me. And I guess I say that to say that if you just be who you are around your family members, you don't have to be preachy, you don't have to be pushy. That doesn't mean you aren't unapologetic about what you believe in. Like, be unapologetic, but you don't have to try to convince your family to go vegan or your friends to go vegan. I mean, if it happens, awesome. If not, don't put that pressure on yourself to try to convince your friends and family, because you'll be disappointed. We can't.
And you're going to alienate yourself. You're going to alienate your family as well. I mean, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, as much as you really want them to be vegan, you really want them to be on board with something that's so important, you love them and you want to keep your family as close to you as possible, which is the most important thing as a human being as well.
Absolutely.
But yes. I actually found a really nice, it was like a vegan roast. I think it was Field Roast that makes it.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah.
I bought that last Christmas. And for me, the most touching one was my grandma. I went and was like, look, grandma, I'm going vegan. And she's like, okay, what is it? What does it entail? What does it really mean? So we had quite a conversation. I was there for a full week and she cooked like the best vegan food that I have ever had.
Oh.
And so she's kept some of that amazing into her like weekly menu and stuff. So it's great. I mean, it's tough. It's tough for the older generations though.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, because they've been indoctrinated and it's just been a part of their life for so long. What they say, what's that saying? It's like trying to write something in cement. After a while, the cement is the cement. It's set in stone. But if you catch it when it's wet, when it's newer and fresh, you can leave a lasting impression. But once that cement is dry, it's going to be hard to, penetrate that.
But that's interesting because I see in the vegan movement, I see like the followers that I have and the listeners and the kind of age group. It seems to be like 25 to 34 seems to be the sweet spot for the vegan movement at the moment, and 70% women.
Yeah, I I totally agree. I'm typically so I think out of the activists in our community that are like really consistently doing activism, I think I'm probably the oldest one in general. I'm 37. Everyone else is like early 20 to mid 20 ish, maybe late 20s. Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely like a millennial thing, and I think they've grown up with the internet in a way that my generation didn't grow up with the internet. So this is more regularly exposed to them. Like they challenge more on a
Yeah, we
regular
don't trust
basis than
anything
my
anymore.
generation. Yeah, yeah, we don't.
Especially like mainstream media. Like if it's on the TV, it can't be true. Let me
Exactly.
Google that.
Yeah.
You know, like straight away.
Absolutely.
So, but why do you think there aren't more vegan men?
Ooh. Okay, that is a very good question. Well, part of the issue is there's a stigma that I don't know, being compassionate and kind isn't, quote unquote manly trait. As men, a lot of us weren't raised to be very expressive with our emotions, and very open. And when you have compassion for other beings, I mean that is powerful. That is an emotional, spiritual thing. So I think that's a part of it. I think that's a part of it. But I don't know, man. I think that's going to change because I was at a protest with another one of my activist friends, and it was about 30 of us, and me and him were literally the only guys there. I didn't recognize it until the end, and I was like, "Oh wow, like it's only two guys here." And
Yeah, I
everybody
mean,
else
we
is
organized an
women.
event with the Dubai vegan community last Thursday, which was a great success. We had about 80 to 100 people that showed up. We were doing like a fine dining cooking class, and there was speakers, sorry, and it was great. But there was literally like 80 to 90% women, and obviously I've got nothing against that, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be like that. But I was trying to understand the why, like why aren't more men. And I think that the fact that you touched on the compassion point is that we're supposed to be shown as strong and not showing the emotions and not caring about other beings and being dominant and macho. It is true that it's changing as well. There is a shift in that mindset. But I was talking
Absolutely.
to John, the mega vegan, on a previous episode. He's been vegan for 63 years, right? Since the day he was born.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And
Oh.
he's done like quite a lot of research into it. And he was saying that vegan men have 16% higher testosterone than non-vegans.
Wow.
And that was
Okay.
research
know
done
that.
by I think it was the British Health Association or one of those like official studies,
Yeah.
which is crazy because that's completely against everything that we're taught about protein, about building muscle and all these things.
Yeah. Exactly. Absolutely.
So that was like mind blowing for me to like find that out.
Yeah. I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah. Apparently
Is it
it's due to
because
the
of, like,
estrogen that's in most of the meat and the dairy that we consume. As most of the animals are female, you're consuming the hormones and that's affecting all that process.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So there should be
Well, I
more
guess that
vegan men.
makes sense. I was just about to ask you why does that happen, but now that you say that, it makes sense.
But do you ever see 100% plant-based world happening?
No, I don't see it. Well, definitely not in our lifetime. If that does happen, I mean, I think it'll be 1,000 or 2,000 years from now. I think it's twofold. It's excuse me. It's one is because I just don't see all people doing one thing simultaneously. Like I don't think us as humans will probably do much of anything 100% together in solidarity, other than eat, sleep, and I don't know. That's about it. Maybe eat and sleep. Other than that, I think it'll be hard. But I do believe that we will have a more plant-based vegan society, I think every year it's going to increase to the point where I think you're going to have a vegan option and it's going to be equivalent to a non-vegan option. And it won't be such a weird thing. So I do think we are moving more towards a more vegan-friendly society. And at some point, I think by the time our generation leaves and transcends into the universe and however we came here, I think we're going to see a lot of change. But I don't know if I ever see 100% plant-based vegan society.
Yeah, because I mean the vegan movement's growing immensely in Western world. You see it like since 2005, I think it's multiplied by 3 or even more, 10, even more than that. But you look at the developing world, which is having India, China, developing middle class, their consumption of meat and dairy is actually increasing.
Yeah.
So like you say, that's where it's difficult to kind of find that 100% plant-based world. I think it can happen. I mean, you see now the amazing products that are coming out that are replacing the meat, that are attracting people towards the plant-based diet.
No. So when you say 100%, like, do you mean you think literally every being will be plant-based or vegan, or do you think like the vast majority of people? Like, what's your, like, is it a literal definition to you?
I think everyone will be, and everyone has to be. Like, if we're gonna sustain this planet as well. Because
yes, that's the big part.
I came into it originally for health, and then obviously once you get into it, the whole animal aspect completely takes over because it's insane what we're doing. And when you see the suffering, you can't just let it happen anymore. You have to speak up. But for me, the environmental aspect has always been close to my heart as well. And when you see the destruction that we're doing to our planet and how inefficient animal agriculture is, even moving away from the sentient part and the suffering, just from the waste of resources, it is insane. It's like the most inefficient thing you could possibly do.
Yeah, it is. It is so backwards. I think that's just part of, sadly, that's just part of how humans are, you know, the kind of way we are as beings, the way we just, you know, drain resources anywhere and everywhere we go. But, you know, we are being more mindful. I think there is an awakening happening in our society, not only with veganism, but just us being more mindful and compassionate of our actions in general. So I think even with, you know, all these movements of, you know, the LGBTQ community, the, just, you know, the awareness of other beings are suffering, we need to address these issues and bring them to the forefront. So I think one day eating meat and eating animal products will be like smoking cigarettes now. Like, people still smoke cigarettes, people still, you know, do that, but it's kind of shunned upon. It's kind of like, if you smoke cigarettes now, it's like, you got to do it, you can't really do it in public, you got to do it out in a corner, you got to go.
Man, I quit smoking 6 months ago, so I know exactly what you're talking about, you know. It's like
exactly. Like, so when people see it, it's like, okay, you still smoking? Like, no one.
Yeah,
really,
I mean, the worst place is if you smoke a cigarette in Australia. People look at like, are you insane? It's like, you could probably like stick a pencil up your nose and people would find that more normal.
Yeah.
So hopefully like that'll move towards eating meat as well, if we can make that become absolutely crazy. And from the health, because I do think it has to start with people's health, with themselves. We're selfish.
Yeah, you're right, because so I watched Cowspiracy, and that's what made me go vegan. I went vegan the same day on the spot. But you know, that was a lot to do with the environment. So once I found out about how draining it was on the environment, like you said, you know, it's the leading cause of the oceanic dead zones and deforestation, all these things, methane production. Once I found out that, I was like, okay, I'm going vegan. But, you know, they did another movie, What the Health. And, you know, same people, but just a different perspective, or they attacked it from a different angle. And that one resonated with people because it was about their actual health. So they had the same goal in mind, to just bring awareness to veganism. But the first one was about the environment. The second one was about the health. And the health, you know, that's the one that's the most popular. People know that one. Like, I hear all types of people talking
Apparently
about
that has the highest conversion rate of people to veganism, is What the Health. That's the most popular one. I think followed by Cowspiracy and then Earthlings. but not many people can watch
Wow.
Earthlings.
Yeah. I still haven't watched it.
Yeah. I forced myself to like skim through it just so, because I was feeling like I can't recommend people to watch something that I don't really even know what it's about. But like I couldn't physically sit and watch the whole thing. I can't do it. You know, I'm too
Yeah.
weak or sensitive for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, but I do think it's necessary, and it's one of those things that I actually want to do because not only I mean, I get it. I understand that I shouldn't be doing this because of the amount of suffering that it causes. But when I explain what's happening to these beings, I need to be able to be specific about what's happening. I don't need to just say it's cruelty. I need to be able to say, oh, well, no, this is the gestation crate where the pigs are kept, and I need to be able to know it from an informational stance to be able to explain it better when I'm at cubes of truth. So I can say, okay, this is the conveyor belt where the chicks go, the male chicks on this side. So I need to be able to explain the process. So I really need to do it for educational purposes also.
Maybe we should do like a live on Facebook viewing thing. You know how you can post
that'd
the
be
video onto like Facebook and then you can like invite people to watch it with you.
Yeah, I'm with it. Totally with it. Let's do it. I'm gonna be on there crying. I'm gonna have a tissue right by my side. Like,
Yeah, it's gonna be a tissue fest.
yeah.
About the personal interest part, and a lot of people are talking about this at the moment. It's like KFC, McDonald's, Burger King getting on board with the vegan options.
Yeah.
And there's a big controversy whether should we support it, should we not. What do you think?
Oh, we should absolutely support it. We should support it to the point where they have to like create more vegan options. Because if we don't support it, I think the thing is people, for some reason, people sometimes think veganism is about purity, but it's not about purity. People don't want to support grocery. If you don't want to support non-vegan companies, then you probably just don't need to exist, because it's really no way to not support. I mean, the biggest industries in the world, the biggest companies in the world are non-vegan. You go into a grocery store, Kroger, Whole Foods, they sell animal products. I mean, you're getting all your vegan stuff from there. So if KFC and Burger King wants to come out with a vegan option, that's less animals being forcibly pregnated. That's less animals being killed to meet the supply and demand for animal products. So the more options they have, the less animals that will suffer. So what we need to do is we need to make sure these products sell out so they can create more options. So eventually that whole menu will be vegan. Or if not the whole menu, at least half or 75%.
And I think the key point that you touched on there is supply. And if they supply those options and they're on the menu and people are seeing them and it makes veganism attainable for people and they can think, oh, well, there is a vegan option on the menu, let me try that. It starts that conversation. They offer the supply, the demand is increasing at the same time. And then, like you say, we can put more of these options onto the menu and eventually make those menus vegan in an ideal world.
Absolutely.
I mean, would you personally go into KFC and try their, what's it called, Imposter, whatever it's called?
Well, okay, so I would. Okay, well, it's a nuance to that, the way I have to answer that. I'm just not a big fan of fast food, so I probably wouldn't go in and eat it. Now, I would go in and eat it if I was hungry and I knew that it wasn't being cooked in the same oil or grease that animal products are. So if it's totally vegan 100% and I don't have to worry about cross-contamination and I'm just hungry and I want something to eat, I would have no resistance to going into there and eating it. As long as it's, like I said, I don't have to worry about any of those things, yeah, it's no problem with me.
That's a valid point, actually. I don't know about their cross-contamination policies and if they cook it in the same oil or if they separate. I don't know how. I'll have to look into that. I might even have to send them an email.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I have to find out that too. I know some are like being mindful of that and they aren't cross-contaminating their products, but I think other companies may not be mindful of it and they're just like, no, it's going to be cooked in the same thing. So it's like, okay.
I was so upset, actually. In Dubai, there was a place, they've got the Impossible Burger. So I was like super psyched. I go there and it turns out like the bun has milk powder and they put cheese on top of it. I'm like, what's the point? You know, like, why bother? You know, you might as well just put a beef burger in it if you're going to do this to me. You know, that's like, makes no sense.
It frustrates me when stuff like that happens because, I mean, well, everything in general can be vegan. So it's really no need to exploit animals. But sometimes there are products where it just seems like, okay, you went out of your way to make this not vegan. Like, this bun could perfectly be vegan. There's no need for this cheese on top of the bun. Like, it's frustrating. I think I personally have a theory that our society exploits animals so frequently that we start thinking of ways to use their body parts and their secretions because, you know, we have so much of them. It's just like, okay, we have 4 tons of cow tails left. How can we make
they'll put it in cosmetics or they'll do whatever, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, look at even alcohol. Like, they use the fish bladders to find the beer, or they use casein for the wine. Like, all this stuff, it's literally like just trying to use up animal products to get as much money as they can from exploitation. So I've got 2 cats, right? And I recently discovered that there is such thing as vegan cat food. However, cats being natural carnivores, unlike humans, which we don't need to get into, because you do enough of that when you're doing your outreach of explaining how humans are natural carnivores. I'm at a moral dilemma on whether or not I should feed my cats vegan cat food.
Okay, so from what I understand, like, this is probably a part of the conversation where I'm not an expert, but like you said, cats are natural carnivores. They are obligate carnivores from what I understand. It doesn't mean that their bodies can't process things that aren't vegan, but I would probably be uneasy about feeding a cat a vegan diet, unless there's science to show that they can survive. But I don't think there is, not that I know of.
I mean, it's a really tough one because it's a double-sided sword. Because on one side, obviously, you have your pet animal, whatever you want to call it, or flatmate, I don't know, anything.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, if you're feeding it normal pet food, you're contributing to the same industry as the meat industry with the byproducts and all that stuff.
But I think the biggest thing is that, you know, veganism is about doing what's possible and practical. So we shouldn't, like I said, it's not a purity thing. I don't know if it's possible and practical for cats to live a life or a diet that is vegan, you know. So I personally wouldn't have a moral dilemma with buying my cat food buying animal products for a cat. But I don't have a companion animal, so
it's
something I don't really have to worry about.
That's the best way, yeah.
But if I did, you know, I wouldn't feel bad though.
I mean, that's the thing. Like you said, it's about doing what you can do and what's accessible, and what's accessible is our own choices instead of trying to force it onto other people and other beings.
Exactly. Now, dogs, hey, I think they're fair game because I think, you know, they are obligate omnivores, so they can go either way, you know.
And apparently the dog that lived the longest was like 23 years old and was on a diet of like brown rice and Brussels sprouts for its whole life.
Yeah, I think I heard something similar.
I always seem to end up talking about pets, like, well, companion animals at least. Everything seems to bring that back to me. True animal lovers, you know.
We're in this for the animals, so how can we not mention actual animals?
Yeah, of course, yeah. It is. Anyway, we've been at this for like over an hour already, man.
Oh, man, yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to schedule a second session for this.
I'm all for it, man. I'm all for it.
Going to wrap this one up for today. Soul, man, thanks for chatting to me. Learned a lot from you as always. If I can't make it out to Atlanta, we'll try and make this a regular live on Instagram podcast, man.
Oh, yeah, we got to do the live stream, you said, the Facebook live viewing.
Yeah. We'll do that. We'll definitely do that. So take care of yourself. For those of you listening to this, tune in next week for another episode of the Plank Code Podcast.
Peace.